G'day guys, welcome back to a new episode of the Boundary Riders podcast, episode 65. We have a lot, of course, to talk about today. We'll be taking a deep dive at the mid-season draft coming up this week. We also want to be taking a look at the Brisbane Lions and where they're at the moment. We'll also be taking a look at the umpires boss coming out today and talking about the interpretation of holding the ball. Of course, we'll be going through our tips in the AFL Fantasy Breakdown. So guys, let's roll the intro and get straight into the new episode. And then Rankin from the pocket, don't tell me, Isaac Rankin!
Yeah.
He's just got the license for a brothel.
Well, I think Gather Round's going to be AFL this next season.
Hill gets at the handle at the back, Nick Dacos to get the pies home! He's done it! So yes guys, again, my brother is away, so I think at this point we're saying it's an injury, but maybe it's like a drug-induced couple of weeks off. That's what I'm going to kind of go with. My brother's definitely, he's rehabilitating from a toe injury that's just been hampering him for, so long. Anyway, he's away again, so unfortunately I'm just going to have to do this one again by myself. That's all good though. I think we're going to have to work out a way to do maybe I'll just have to do the podcast for a while now by myself, I guess, until maybe his time schedule at work changes, because... Yeah, I mean, I know he'd rather do this than be at work, but at the end of the day, he's not much he can really do. Obviously, he needs to work when if they need him. So, yeah, a little bit unfortunate, but end of the day, I'll be able to run things for the next couple of weeks. So, before we get into some AFL stuff, I just wanted to quickly talk about the newest video essay that I put out about the AFL commentary, and... it seems, this is on Monday, so this is just a couple of hours after I actually uploaded it, and it started really well. It seems like the video essays is something that you guys really, really like, so of course I'm going to keep doing it. I think the next one I'm going to be doing probably in a couple of weeks is something about North Melbourne, so it's not just going to be me shitting on them, but we'll be talking about like a breakdown of what's happened at the club and whatever. So that's probably what I'm going to go with next. I'm thinking maybe I'll do one about a team every month, because I'm trying to do them every 2 weeks. I'm thinking I'll do a team sort of based one every month, and then one that's more a different topic. So we've obviously had the 20th team videos that came out, and then we did the Sydney Swans one, and then we did this commentary one. So then I think next one will probably be a North Melbourne one, and then maybe I'll do something else. I was thinking maybe one in the future about the journalism in AFL, how poor it's been the last couple of years, how they've been throwing trade rumours out, and the fake clickbaity titles of all that sort of stuff. I thought it may be a good idea for another one, so that would take a while to research though and do. So that's probably something else I'm thinking about. Let me know down below how you guys feel about the channel at the moment. Of course, we did hit 1,000 subscribers last Monday, I believe, so I do really appreciate you guys for the support on this channel. You probably noticed on this podcast it's monetized, so we've got adverts on it, so that's really cool. It's not much money, but I mean, to make money on something that I'm truly enjoying doing is just amazing. It's a sort of a dream come true, so I really do appreciate your guys' support. And from that commentary video, I'll be reading through the comments, seeing what you guys thought about, not so much the video. I mean, yes, the video, if you guys enjoyed it. I do appreciate people telling me feedback on the video itself, but more feedback about commentators. Like, what do you guys feel, if you feel like they're good or bad? From what I see so far, people are talking about the different commentators that they like, and the fact that they've that they thought some of them, like that I said, were, they do enjoy them. So, I'm not trying to change your guys' opinion on commentators, but my opinion is, lately, the last couple of years especially, the commentary standard in AFL has been dropping drastically. And I've noticed that as well from when, I'm sure all of you guys have seen, either if you've ever seen a live stream or whatever, you've probably seen me do the commentary stuff. And, some people don't really like it. That's fine. Some people do tend to enjoy it. And I do get a few comments that say that I'm better than the commentators. Now, I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, I do appreciate the kind words, but it does also I did mention in the video, about Kelly Underwood, the fact that I can even be compared to a person it's their actual job to do it, that's pretty damning on the job. It's on the people that are actually professionally getting paid to do it. So that's just my kind of thoughts about it. I tend to enjoy doing it, so I'm going to keep on doing the commentary stuff. And if you guys do want to join the live streams, we do them every week. I'm trying to do 2 a week. But obviously, I want to spend some time with my wife on the weekend as well. So I've got to balance that. And, she's really supportive on all of this. And, usually when I do the live streams, I usually tell her and she usually plays her games or whatever. So she's more than happy to. But obviously, I do want to spend time with her as well. So I'm just a cuck, aren't I? Anyway, let's move into a bit of AFL, eh? So usually I go through some news stuff. And at the moment, I look through injuries and suspensions and stuff. And not really as much came out. I guess it came out throughout the weekend, so there's not really much new stuff. So I wanted to take a look at the mid-season draft. So, of course, the mid-season draft is actually happening this week. It's happening on Wednesday night, so when this comes out Wednesday morning, it'll be happening the night. It does say here that it will be coming at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, so that's 6:30 here in South Australia. So I'll be probably keeping an eye on it. I may do a live stream. I don't know. I probably won't because I don't think there's going to be many players picked up, to be honest. And I think that's a big Actually, we'll get to that in a second. Let's just take a look at a couple of names that are in contention to be picked up. And there's quite a few that are... I don't think there's actually many players that weren't previously AFL listed players that are even being considered at the moment. So the last couple of years, we've seen the likes of Ryan Marrick, who went to the West Coast Eagles. He was a number 1 pick. I do remember North Melbourne a couple of years ago picked up Edwards, and he got delisted last year. So sometimes you see an ex-AFL player come back through that role, back through the mid-season draft. So I do think that's very exciting. But yeah, there's a couple more this year. Trent Bianco, who got delisted last year from Collingwood. An ex-Demon in Kyle Dunkley. Port Adelaide big man, ex-big man in Bryn Teakle. Ex-Kangaroo in Flynn Perez, and also ex-Richmond midfielder and Riley Collier-Dawkins are all familiar names that will be nominating for the mid-season draft. And also a Sydney first-round draft pick in Matt Ling, who has emerged as a candidate, being part of the group of the 24 players who are undergoing AFL medicals. So I think Matt Ling will probably be picked up by a club. I'm not sure as to who at this stage, but I think he will be because... when he played for Sydney through that 2020-2021 period when Sydney were kind of on that short rebuild that they were. And didn't really get a good go, in my opinion. I thought he was a really good player to work with, but Sydney delisted him, I think, at the end of 2021 or 2022, which I was a little bit shocked by because he was a very high draft pick for Sydney, and he's a decent left foot kick. He's a good runner as well. He's an accumulator. And I thought that he would have been, and considering how Sydney have moved into the role of like left footers now, or at least decent, very good kicks to the footy, I thought he would have fit into it quite well. But it did seem that maybe he didn't have the Sydney Swans mentality or something. I'm not too sure. But I thought he was someone who could work with. In the last couple of years, I believe he went to the VFL for a year, and this year he's been playing for Norwood, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But he has been playing in the Sandful. So I know he has done that. So I think that he's definitely a prospect that a club will probably look at this time around because we'll look about the clubs in a minute who have got picks. But a decent left foot kick who can, run all day, I think that's invaluable at this point of the season. So some teams who need to add some sort of depth, I think that's definitely a plus for them. Riley Collier-Dawkins as well, I think is definitely likely because, again, he was another high pick for Richmond and they delisted him last year, which was a shock to me. I thought that he was kind of on the cusp of getting into that team last year and he got delisted. So I was very surprised by that one, but I think he'll be looked at as well. Kyle Dunkley, an interesting one. Obviously, the brother of Josh Dunkley. He's playing for the Brisbane Reserves at the moment. So he may get picked up as well. And Brisbane do have a lot of picks to look at in this mid-season draft if they want to use them. So looking at it now, it says here that the clubs must have a vacant list spot in order to take part in the mid-season draft, of course. It does say at this stage, so this is Monday. I mean, they do have until Tuesday night, I think, to open a list spot if they want to. But this is just Monday afternoon at this stage. It does say at this stage that Geelong, Greater Western Sydney Giants, and the Sydney Swans currently don't have a vacant list spot. So I don't think any of those clubs will really be picking anything up anyway. It does say here that Brisbane have potentially 4 picks. Richmond and the Crows potentially have 3. Carlton, Collingwood, North Melbourne, Western Bulldogs all have 2. And then Essendon, Freo, Gold Coast, Hawthorn, Melbourne, St Kilda, West Coast all have 1 list spot. Did they say Port Adelaide? Doesn't really say anything about Port Adelaide. I may have missed them. Yeah, it doesn't say anything about Port. But that's kind of the list spots open right now. With Brisbane, they've obviously got a lot of injuries. I think they'll pick up at least one, at the very least. Last year, there was 26 spots available, and only 13 were used. So I'm thinking it's going to be a pretty light sort of mid-season draft, to be honest. I think there's going to be very few picks used. I think Brisbane will probably go hard. I think a likes of, I don't know if Matt Ling would be an option for them, but I think Kyle Dunkley could be. Those are a couple of players that would emerge as an option, in my opinion. They've got a lot of injuries at the moment, Brisbane, and we'll talk about them in a minute. But I think this is sort of the thing of like, there hasn't been a lot of players mentioned who have not had an AFL experience or AFL games, AFL on an AFL list that are being looked at here. And I just think it's a bit, I don't know if it's not cowardly. I don't know why I thought that a word, but it's kind of an indictment on the recruitment and the pathways to get into the AFL, because we've seen in the past 4 or 5 years that the rookie list spots have basically just become list spots for AFL veteran players who just want to keep on going, but the clubs don't want to use a full list spot who has to pay them a decent wage to keep them. So rookie list spots have just basically become a veterans list, basically. And I just think it's crap. I mean, we should be using the rookie list spots, AFL clubs should be using them to blood some players that have not had experience yet, that they don't know, that they don't have the necessary confidence to give them a full list spot. Like, you're not going to give, international players, for example. I think the rookie list could be used a lot more for that sort of stuff. For players who haven't played a lot of AFL, but they have the potential, that's what the rookie list should be used for. For players who just aren't in the best 50 from the draft, but definitely have, I don't know, the heart for it, I guess. But, I mean, we've seen rookie list players become some of the best players in the AFL. So I've just been a little bit annoyed lately the last couple of years that the rookie list now is just used for teams to throw 3 or 4 veterans onto the list and just not use them. And I think that's kind of shown with like this mid-season draft. AFL teams, this is an opportunity to give not only a player a chance at an AFL club, but give an AFL team something to work with here. At least, like for Richmond, for example, the last couple of weeks have been playing only 4 or 5 players in the VFL that are AFL listed. So they clearly need players to pick from, but I don't even know if Richmond are going to use a player. I think they'll pick up one, but they've only got 3 list spots open. But I mean, that's fair enough. But they're definitely not going to use all 3. I would be very surprised if they did. I think it'd be great if they did, but I don't think they will, because they don't want to take the risk of having to keep him on the list for 6 months and pay him. So when Richmond is probably sitting there like, oh, what's the point of giving this guy a list spot if we don't really think he's going to be in this team in 6 months, and we don't want to use this money on a player because we're down the bottom of the ladder. So that's the thing. I just think that the developments of players in the AFL has definitely gone down. Maybe it had to do with COVID, that a lot of players decided that the AFL took a lot more away from the development side of players. But the fact that lately the drafts, like even just the last year's draft, I think it was only like 50-odd players picked. And there should be a whole lot more than that, especially with the Tasmanian team coming in. And I know people do bring up the point of like there's not enough talent for a 19th team or even a 20th. But I think that's on the AFL to push to get more development into younger kids from a younger age, to get them into playing in the AFL in the future. I mean, that's a big reason why the academy players, I think that's a big reason why AFL clubs get frustrated by the academies. It's because it's because these clubs like the Sydneys, GWS, Gold Coast, Brisbane and that, they are blooding these younger kids to become AFL players. For like Collingwoods and all that sort of stuff, I don't think they should have the academies. I don't think they should have academies. Like, if they had academies and then they had the first choice of getting Harley Reid, I think that's a bit unfair. But what I'm saying is, because they are football states, the AFL should be putting a lot more work into blooding kids than what they're doing right now. Because the last couple of years, I don't know the exact statistics, shocker. I mean, I'm a guy sitting in my room sounding like an absolute loser. But what I'm saying is, it just feels like there's not been a lot of development in, younger players coming through the last few years. Like, I know this is a stupid example, but even looking at it on an AFL fantasy side of things, and I know that's stupid, but you do realise that there's not a lot of younger guys coming through. Like, I do remember a couple of years ago when I did AFL fantasy, especially at the starts of years, you would have a lot of players to pick from who were debuting, like at the start of them, and you'd have a lot of 200k, or like basement price players who you could pick from to then put on your bench, and that you'd have a lot. Like, I remember, like, there'd always be like there'd be always 2 or 3 ruckmen debuting. There'd be always a bunch of all these midfielders and younger kids getting a go in round 1. But now, I think we had, like, in round 1, or opening round, I think there was only maybe 10 debutants. So, I think that's, maybe I'm just completely bullshitting out of my ass. I don't know. But I do think that there's so less development now in younger kids coming through to the AFL. And I don't know why there wouldn't be. The AFL is the most popular it's ever been. So there should be more kids, coming through and then coming into the AFL. But we're getting less people coming through to the draft. We're getting less people picked up in the mid-season draft. And AFL clubs aren't taking the chance on picking, adding these players to the rookie list, as we've seen, because the rookie list is basically just a veterans list now, where AFL clubs, they don't want to pay the likes of a Brandon Ellis or something. I don't know why I said him. He's not even on the... Hugh Greenwood would be one for North Melbourne, or Liam Shields. Instead of picking up a young guy who's 18 years of age, a young kid who needs to grow into his body, they pick up Liam Shields and Hugh Greenwood or whatever and just chuck them on the rookie list because they're not going to get paid a lot, but they can come in and play a role for your team. Which is yeah, fair enough. I'm not saying you can't use that for the rookie list, but at least add some younger guys on there who, could potentially be the next Nick Martin or something. I mean, Nick Martin wasn't even picked for... he was a WA boy. Didn't even get picked up by the WA clubs until and then Essendon picked him up. I think he was a rookie listed player, and he came in his first game last year, kicked 5 goals. So there's clearly players out there who, AFL clubs aren't really taking a look at, and they can still come into the AFL teams and have a role. Like, he's arguably been one of their best... He's probably been in their top 5 best players this year, Nick Martin, and he only came into the AFL system last year. So, yeah, I just think the development in the AFL at the moment's been pretty scarce, and I think the AFL need to do a whole lot more, especially when there are the likes of Tasmania coming in a couple of years. We need to have the talent pathways growing a lot more, because right now the rookie lists are a joke. There's no point in even teams having them, really. I think AFL teams should have a veterans list where you can put your veteran players who have played 100 plus games or something, you can put them on a rookie list, or a separate list of players that are there that aren't getting paid as much, for example. Like Sam Reid for Sydney this year. That's probably the best example. I don't know how I didn't say that, dumbass. But Sam Reid, he is not on the Sydney's list. He's on the rookie list right now. He should be on a veterans list for Sydney, and then Sydney could have potentially picked someone up as a rookie list player who could have had a go this year. Like, they probably wouldn't have for Sydney, but I'm sure you understand what I mean by that. Anyway, let's move on, and we'll talk about Brisbane, because they do have 4 list spots for the mid-season draft. That's not really what I was going to talk about for Brisbane, but I just wanted to look at the fact that obviously Brisbane Lions are in a pretty weird spot right now. They're sitting in 13th spot on the ladder. They've only had 4 wins from 11 games this year. They lost again on the weekend to Hawthorn. And is it... some people have thrown out the words of, is it at the end of the era for the Brisbane Lions, and have they wasted it? I don't really see it that way. I think Brisbane are... I think this year, I honestly think they should just not... I think they should be looking for next year. I think they should use this season as a write-off and then come back better in 2025, because they've had a lot go against them this year. Injuries are obviously the big one, and they've had form on the likes of Eric Hipwood. Joe Danaher's been in and out of form. Their best player by far is Dane Zorko, and he's, 32, 33 years of age, which is really not good enough, really, for the rest of the younger players. So I think Brisbane really should use this season as similar to what Geelong did, and I'm not saying throw the season now. There's obviously still, half a season to go. But right now, they're sitting in 13th spot. They're 2 wins out of the 8. And I don't think there is a real need to push to the limits at this point to then get back into the finals and then go out round 1 of the finals. I think Brisbane need to seriously look at resting players or sending them off like in 6 weeks' time. Let's say in 6 weeks they are 12th, 11th on the ladder. They haven't really improved too much. If they get to that point, I think at that point they just start to go, okay, Joe, you've had a niggle in your knee for the last 6 weeks. We're going to send you to have surgery. We're just going to count this season as a write-off. I think that's what they should do, and then come back better in 2025. They'll obviously get more of a pre-season because they won't be playing finals. I think that's where they should go because I still think they have a list to compete for a grand final. But right now, the one thing that Brisbane have had over the past 4 odd years is the fact that they have had a very fit list. I think there was a statistic that said that they have had the least amount of debutants in the past 4 years, and I think that just shows. I mean, look at the list. Look at the team that they lined up in against Hawthorn and lined up against, I don't know, round 24 last year. I bet you there is so many different players in that team, and the likes of Ravel, Morris. These guys wouldn't have got a game if there wasn't for all these injuries for the Lions this year. Even if they were in this, no, you know what? I don't. Maybe if they were in a crappier form, but they wouldn't be in that bad a form if it wasn't for all the injuries that they've had, in my opinion. Maybe on the side of like they just haven't shown enough. I think there's always a game plan that shows that they're not playing very well either. I don't think they're playing at their best by any means, like at all. I don't think they've shown anywhere near their form in any game this year. Compared to what they had in the 2024 grand final, or 2023 grand final, where they almost won it. Now, you could say, is it a hangover? I don't really think it is. I think there are a lot of injuries. And we've got to remember as well that Sydney had a very similar sort of season last year, coming off of smashing in the grand final. Not the same, obviously, but Sydney had a very terrible start to 2023. There was a lot of injuries. They nearly got beaten by North Melbourne. I remember that. And I think by round 13 or 14, they were like 15th on the ladder. And they were able to fight their way back and make it to finals and then lose by 1 goal against Carlton, who eventually made the prelim. So you could look at it that way for Brisbane, saying that because they've got the bye this week, maybe they come back after the bye, they get a couple of players back, and they can surge and make the 8 from here. Who knows? But if the next 4 games after the bye, or 5 games, are the Bulldogs, St Kilda, Port Adelaide, Melbourne, and the Crows. Bulldogs is an interesting game. They play St Kilda at home, so they should win that, even though they've been that good at home this year. But then they've got Port Adelaide, Melbourne, and the Crows. I think if they get to Melbourne, or... no, you know what? Let's say the Crows. If they get to the Crows, and they are in the same spot they are right now, I think they use this season as a write-off. They say, look, send players off to early, surgeries, get them all out of the way, so then they're ready to go week 1 of pre-season. Joe Danaher's there, Eric Hipwood's back. I don't know if he's playing with injury or he's just in poor form. I don't know. But there's a lot of things right now that aren't going right for the Lions. And I just don't think... I think there's still another level. I think there's still another couple of years in the Lions list that can compete for a flag. I don't think they're gone just yet. I don't think there's an end of an era sort of aura about them. I just think they are playing so poorly at the moment and they don't have a lot of resources to go to because their depth, even though it has been tested this year, let's say that, and they haven't had to use them either. And I think another one as well is like the younger players of the of the Brisbane Lions. Who are their young stars? I think people have also forgotten about Will Ashcroft. This guy's been gone for the whole half of the first half of this season, and he was gone late last year as well. This guy is going to be a generational midfielder, and everyone's forgotten about him. So he comes back. I would almost give him the rest of the year off if he's not going to be back by around 18 or so. Don't bother bringing him back. Let him have a whole pre-season and give him a go. That's what I would say. But they got Will Ashcroft to come back, and Kitty Coleman as well. Those 2 are massive ins for Brisbane, round 1 of 2025. Those 2 walk into any club, best 22 in the AFL. So those 2 are massive players to come in. If Dane Zorko meets that same form that he's in at the moment, he's playing off that half-back role or whatever. I think that's a great role for him to play. I thought he'd play better as a small forward, but yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of upside to the Brisbane Lions. I don't think they're done just yet. But if they are in the same position next year, then I think there's a huge question marks about Chris Fagan's job, because I don't think he lasts 2 years in the same spot. But I honestly would give him next year as well, and say, look, I think you should take the Chris Scott approach and say, look, we've had a lot of injuries this year, as they did last year. You know, he did it so well, I thought. And I know they've had a 4-run loss streak here, Geelong, but I do also think that they've had quite a few. They've had a few more injuries show up the last 4 weeks, and also I think they're very much overachieved in the first 2 months of the season, Geelong. But on the side of Brisbane, I think we'll see how they get up. If they get to the Crows and they're in the same position that they are right now, I think they call this season a write-off. They say, look, round 1, 2025, that's when we rebuild. That's when we get back to where we were last year. I think that's where they kind of sit. I don't call them out just yet. I don't think it's the end of the era. I think they've got too good a list, too good a amount of, that age bracket between 25 to 29 that can still compete for a flag. So I'm not writing off Brisbane just yet. That's just me. Let me know what you guys think about the Brisbane Lions at the moment, because I think it's very easy for people to just jump on the wagon of, oh, they're done. It's all over. They suck. Because obviously it's very easy to do. You can just sit there and, that's what they do on the bloody footy classified every single week. They sit there and go, yep, they're gone. They suck. Who's the next coach for the Brisbane Lions? No. Let's have an actual look at this and see that, sometimes teams off a grand final and, Brisbane have not had this issue for a while. So let's give them a bit of a break, realise that, look, they can bounce back. They've just had a tough year at the moment. And, their form hasn't been that great the past 5 weeks. I know a lot of people were talking about the Brisbane Lions potentially bouncing back, from the start of the season when they started poorly. They've only won 2 of their past 5 games. And one of them was a draw against the Crows. But their next 5 weeks after the bye as well are very telling, because they've got Port Adelaide, Melbourne and Adelaide after 2 decent games they play the Bulldogs away in Melbourne, and we saw how poor they played against Hawthorn, and then St Kilda at home. They'll beat them, St Kilda. So, right now, I think the Brisbane... I also have this thing here from the AFL website saying the difficulty of their fixture. So, at the start of the season, they had the 12th hardest fixture to start the season. So, it wasn't really that hard. They should have done a lot better, but on the other hand, they did have a lot of injuries. So, I kind of see that even it out. Their fixture between rounds 12 to 15, so through the byes, is equal ninths hardest, so it's in the middle. And then their difficulty of fixture between rounds 16 to 20 is the 5th hardest. So that's where I'm kind of sitting at right now. If they hit that, once they hit that round 17, 18, if they're in the same spot they are right now, there is no point trying to get the likes of, players who are under an injury cloud, trying to push them through a season. That's where I'm sitting at right now with the Lions. There's no point pushing them all the way through to round 24 and, them limping over the line and then getting to next pre-season and having to do it all over again. I think that's where they kind of sit right now. Because they could go pick up a decent player in the draft at pick 7 or 8. That's what I'm saying. And then they get some more youth into their list. I don't think that they really need to top up too much. Maybe they could pick a couple of guys from different clubs. They're still a pretty big destination club, I would say, Brisbane. Who wouldn't like to go and live up in the Brisbane area? So I think they could definitely do that. And I think that's where they kind of go from here. So I'm not writing off the Lions just yet. I think they definitely can bounce back next year. And who knows? Maybe they could do what Sydney did throughout the end of last year and push their way through to the finals from here. Who knows? That could definitely happen as well. All right, so after that, guys, let's move on to our fan favourite segment, of course. The Flog of the Week is back. Last week, we had a huge nomination for Caroline Wilson. She's honestly leading the pack right now. She's done a very good job. Her big fat nose is she's a nose length in front, which is like 5 meters. And if you see that in a horse race, that's basically got a 1. I don't really know. I don't really watch much horse racing. But anyway, she's got a nose length in front at the moment. This week, I don't really know where this one sits because I think this is a pretty dumb thing to do, but you kind of expect it from a person like this. So, this week, the nominee for the Flog of the Week is named Stephen McBurney. Now, do you know who that is? You may have, if you saw it if you've been reading the AFL website on Monday or Tuesday. If you didn't, you probably wouldn't know who the hell this guy is. Stephen McBurney is the umpire's boss. So, a lot of people have differing opinions on umpires. Most people would say they're dumb, or they're blind, or they're stupid. And, you know, you could kind of look at that for this guy's the head of them. But anyway, throughout last round, a couple of coaches came out and wanted more clarification on holding the ball and why there's so many different decisions not being paid throughout the season. Or last weekend we saw Mac Andrew hold a pin and arm of Charlie Curnow. He was held for quite a long time, and the umpire didn't call holding the ball. And so Damien Hardwick questioned it. Michael Voss, I believe, questioned it as well. But I think on the wider scene of things, I think every single AFL fan has no clue what is interpreted as holding the ball. I don't know what it is. I don't know how they pay it, because one week they'll pay it the way I would interpret it as, if you drop the ball on the ground, gone. If you get tackled, you have an opportunity to get it, even if it's a small second of an opportunity to get rid of it. If you have that opportunity to get rid of it, you have your hands free, you're gone if you don't get rid of it. But the amount of times they don't pay that, and the ones that they will pay when a player gets pushed on top of and sat on the ball by a guy who's, 20 kilos heavier, and they're not making an attempt, that's when they pay it. So I think that's when a lot of people get frustrated about. So Stephen McBurney came out with a statement today talking about the interpretation of holding the ball. Now, if he came out with, not an apology, but if he came out and said that this season we have made some terrible mistakes on the holding the ball front, there have been a lot of decisions that we've made wrong, and we are going to be trying to fix them over the next few months, but we'll be making a more bigger fix of it over the off season, I'd be like, okay, that's a way better response. He went and said, oh, well, it's pretty tough being an umpire, and, it's hard to interpret. Hey, bro, you're an umpire. You're the boss of these guys. It's on you, the fact that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. So the first thing that they did was, the first thing I will say is, if you're going to release a statement about the interpretation of holding the ball, could you not come out and lie in your statement, okay? Because one of the first thing he said was, one of the quotes reads, umpires are clear on when they should and shouldn't blow the whistle. No, they're not. Clearly they don't know when to blow the whistle, because the amount of times that I have seen when players get an arm held and they get spun around with the ball in their hand, that they will blow the whistle. But then there's other times, like the Charlie Curnow one on the weekend, where they don't call it. And then, obviously, players get put in danger. So they don't know when to blow the whistle. So that's one thing that you just fucking way off about, because we can see that. We're not blind. We went to Specsavers and got our glasses, umpires. What are you talking about? Anyway, there is just no way in hell the umpires have a clear definition of, one, blowing the whistle, but two, not paying holding the ball. They don't have a clear interpretation of what holding the ball is. Clearly, one example that we'll look at, that I would bring up, is the Sam Draper one earlier in the year against the Adelaide Crows. He clearly dove on it, he didn't make an attempt to get rid of it, and it was called a ball up. Clearly, your umpires don't know how to pay the decision. So don't come out and tell me that they have any clue what they're doing, because they clearly don't. And that's fine if you come out and say, look, at the moment there's a bit of confusion around holding the ball. And he does mention it a few times, like there is some confusion, but this should have been resolved from that Sam Draper incident, because there was confusion on that one. I think there was a bit of confusion as well from the AFL supporter public, but that's when it should have been sorted out. We shouldn't have got to midway through the season again. By the way, this happens every single fucking year. When we sit there and go, what is the interpretation of holding the ball? They go, oh, well, we're gonna fix it, and they don't, do they? We sit here every single year and go, what is the interpretation of holding the ball? Because this has not been an issue just this year. This has been an issue for many, many years. And we've been sitting here wondering, what is it? Tell us what it is, and then we will go by that. In the rule book, it says if you have an opportunity to get rid of the ball, and you don't, you're gone. And the amount of times that fucking players hold the ball, have an opportunity to get rid of it, then just sit on it. The umpire goes, oh, well, look, I mean, he made it an attempt. Yeah, bro, he made a fucking attempt, and he fucking didn't get rid of it. So it's gone. Oh, fuck, this shits me, because it frustrates every single AFL supporter, because we sit here and we every single game of every single year, except for when the grand final comes, eventually then they just seem to know how to umpire the game. But other than that, and well, most grand finals anyway, but other than that, throughout the whole entire season, we have to sit here and get frustrated every single week about the interpretation of things like holding the ball and that. Like every single game, I bet you could point out at least once or twice when the umpires have missed a holding the ball decision. And we go, oh, well, that was pretty shit. But anyway, another issue that I found with is the fact that holding the ball, like, one of the arguments he made is if a player has an arm free, they can get rid of the ball. So that's why they don't blow the whistle straight away. That's, I guess it's fine, but that's the big issue right now with like slinging tackles as well. Similar one to like Jack Higgins or whatever, and Alir a couple of weeks ago. That was a big one because Jack Higgins got suspended for it because because the umpire didn't call for the ball immediately. Went, oh, you pinned him holding the ball. I would much rather, if a player has the ball free and is not getting rid of it in an amount of time that is reasonable, I don't know, it's 2 seconds, if they're not getting rid of it and they're waiting to try and get rid of the ball, the umpire should say, you've had a perfect amount of time, you're holding the ball. That's the decision. Except, no, they wait until they either get taken to ground and potentially get their heads slung into the ground, and then players play for it on the ground for a head knock, and then the umpire gives that free kick. That shouldn't get to that point. The AFL should come out and say, the umpire should be making the decision before that happens, before the player is slung to the ground and potentially gets a head knock. They should, if you have the opportunity, if you have an arm free and you have the ball in your hand, it shouldn't be, oh no, we're going to hold our mouth to the whistle and wait to see what happens. No, that shouldn't be the way you interpret it. The interpretation should be, if he's still holding on to it 2 or 3 seconds later and is waiting for a teammate to run past to give a handball to or a little kick to, then he's gone. He's had too much time. You're gone. So then the tackler doesn't have the thought in his brain, oh, well, I have to bring him to ground now, because if I don't bring him to ground, he will get rid of the ball and get it to a teammate, and then they get away. Because that's why players drag the players to ground. It's not because they want to inflict pain. It's because they want to stop them from moving the ball forward and getting out of the area. Am I the only one who sees that? I'm sure I'm not. I'm sure most of you would see that. But for some reason, the head of the umpiring department doesn't. And that just shits me. Anyway. I'll stop about that part. There's one more part of this statement that just absolutely annoyed the crap out of me. So, to end my rant, he added the adjudication on whether a disposal is legal or not. He says, one of the hardest decisions in the AFL is deciding if it's a legal disposal or not. And he says, the fact is that the umpire, it is the hardest for an umpire to make, particularly when the vision is blocked by other players. Now, the reason why this annoys me is because this is the reason why you wanted an extra umpire. There was always 3 field umpires, which I think is probably too many anyway. But I think it's probably fine, 3. But then you asked for a 4th. And the reason why you asked for a 4th is because that umpire would help with missed decisions that were happening on the ground. And we were like, okay, you can have a 4th umpire. But they don't do anything. All they do is get in the way of the other umpires. They, are making calls from 60 metres away, calling decisions that aren't there. The amount of times that happens is hilarious. The amount of times the umpires from 60 metres away makes a call that the umpire right in front of you doesn't. Because maybe he has a better view of it. But on the legal disposal stuff, the amount of times that you see a player throw the ball and there's not... I understand when it's happened sometimes, but it happens so often when a player doesn't dispose of the ball legally and you don't see it and you call play on. Oh, we didn't see it. Oh, we didn't see it. There are 4 of you out there. How many more do you need to see a free kick? Like, are you serious? That's on you and your umpiring department for not being in the correct position throughout the game. You should be ready to call. You should be in the correct position, especially the Sam Draper one. And I'll bring it up again. But again, there were 4 of you out there, and none of you saw the way he dove on that footy. None of you saw it. That's on you in the umpiring department. That is not on anyone else. That's not on, oh, well, that player was in the way. No, you should be in the correct position to see that. That's not on anyone else but your umpires and the umpiring department. And I understand there are issues with the umpiring as well because they don't train a lot. They should be training a lot more, which is a fair criticism of the AFL and not the umpires. But so maybe there should be a lot more of a look on the AFL as well. They should be paying the umpires more. But don't sit there and say that's the only reason. You should be doing your job better to then, warrant the pay rise, the more help and that sort of, well, not help, but the pay, for example, would be my main thing. Okay? And the fact that they don't train more often is a problem on the AFL side. I agree with that. But there are so many times that they just won't admit, like they will admit maybe that they got it wrong after the game. But like this guy, like Stephen McBurney, I almost forgot his name. Bro, you know that the umpires have got it wrong so many times this season with the interpretation of holding the ball. Don't give some little fluff piece and say, oh, it's a bit confusing sometimes. Just tell us you got it wrong. Because we're not stupid. We can see your umpires are struggling with how to interpret a holding the ball decision. Don't sit there and say, oh, they've got a pretty good idea of what they're doing. No, they don't, dude. They don't. Clearly, they don't. So don't fluff me up and fluff me up and puff and fuck me off, okay? Because that is not true. So don't absolutely bullshit me, okay? I'm going to finish there on that bit because I'll just be ranting all day. All right, guys. Now, of course, we're at this part of the podcast where we're going to be doing our tips for round 12. This is the first round of the second buys, I guess, now, isn't it? We're into round 12 now. We've got a couple of teams having the bye this week. It is the Lions, North Melbourne, the Sydney Swans, and the Giants with the bye this week. My tips for this week are Port Adelaide over Carlton on Thursday night. Friday night, I've gone Collingwood over the Western Bulldogs. On Saturday, I've gone the Crows over Hawthorn, the West Coast Eagles over St Kilda, and Geelong over Richmond. And on Sunday, I've gone Fremantle over Melbourne, and the Gold Coast Suns over Essendon. So my brother, obviously, is not here, but he has given me his tips as well. He has gone Carlton over Port Adelaide, Collingwood over the Western Bulldogs, Adelaide over Hawthorn, West Coast over the St Kilda, Geelong over Richmond, Melbourne over Fremantle, and the Gold Coast Suns over Essendon. So a couple of big games this week. So we'll start on Thursday night, Port Adelaide and Carlton. Now, I've got the reasoning for why he's done these tips, my brother, so I'll just go through why I've gone for certain teams. I've gone for Port Adelaide because I think they had a pretty easy week last week, so I don't think the 5-day break really hampers Port Adelaide too much. I think it hampers Carlton a little bit more. And Carlton still have a terrible record at Adelaide Oval. They have only won one game, I believe, at Adelaide Oval, and that was against Fremantle and Gather Round. And we know how close they were to losing that game. So I think that that's something that's concern for Carlton. Another thing for Port Adelaide is I think that they're starting to get some consistency through their midfield. I think the likes of Ollie Wines, Jason Horne-Francis going through there. Rosie was kind of eased back into it last week, and Zach Butters. I think that's the key four for Port Adelaide that will go through there. And I think the likes of Will and Drew going through as well is something that will help them. I also do have a big concern over Carlton's forward line at the moment. I think they broke away from Gold Coast last week, but they still weren't able to do it until the last quarter, and they dominated the Gold Coast for a lot of that game. So that's just a little bit of a concern on the Carlton front. I do think that is somewhere where Carlton can get on top of Port Adelaide, because I think Port Adelaide do struggle with the big key forward. The main reason why I'm going for Port Adelaide here is the fact that Carlton have a pretty terrible record at Adelaide Oval, and because both teams are coming off a 5-day break, I think that Port Adelaide, because they played North Melbourne last week and kind of pretty much walked over them in the end, I think that's going to affect Port Adelaide a lot less than Carlton. That's kind of where I'm going for on that game. Friday night is Collingwood up against the Western Bulldogs. This isn't Marvel, so even though it's a Collingwood home game, it is technically a Western Bulldogs home game. So this does set up for a pretty interesting contest. And the Bulldogs last week were very good against the Swans, and arguably could have beaten them if it wasn't for the injuries throughout the game. I do think that Collingwood are going to win this game because last week, they should have beaten Fremantle. And if it wasn't for I don't know if it was just a free kick, but for 3 quarters, basically, they had this game won, Collingwood, and they cost it in the last 10 minutes. They threw it. They're not going to let that happen again. I think Collingwood, they've hit that form now. They haven't lost in their last 6 or 7 games, I think. And I think they're hitting their form now. So I think it's going to be hard to tip against Collingwood for the rest of the year. I know they've had 2 draws, but I think that they'll bounce back after a pretty poor last 15 minutes. I don't think they'll accept that sort of ending to the game. And I think they'll bounce back and win this one pretty comfortably in the end. I will talk about the last 2 games on Sunday. First one is Melbourne and Fremantle. This is an interesting one because this is in Darwin. And it's 12:30 in the afternoon on a Sunday. So the reason why I have gone Fremantle is because the weather, for one thing. I think they're starting to get pretty cold in Victoria. So I don't think they're going to be accustomed to this temperature. And I think we saw Geelong in a couple of weeks ago. They couldn't deal with the conditions. Now, Perth is not exactly warm at the moment, but I do think that the Fremantle players would be more accustomed to the temperature up in Darwin. So I think that's where Fremantle can get this game won. And also, I think that Fremantle want to respond after last week. They were poor for 3 quarters against Collingwood, like I mentioned a minute ago, and I think they're going to want to respond from this. And the fact is that Melbourne, yes, they scored 100 points against St Kilda. Well, they scored high against St Kilda, but it's St Kilda. Whoop-de-doo. They have struggled to score a lot of the times this year, Melbourne, and Fremantle's defence, I think, is going to hold up pretty strong here. I think Fremantle can get a pretty good score. I think their smalls can get to work. I think it's going to be a little bit different for their tool. Because their defenders last week for Melbourne were able to, portray the backline all day. And I don't think they'll have that luxury in Darwin because it'll be a lot more warmer, humid. It's not going to be easy to just intercept mark all day. So I think if Fremantle can get the ball to ground, Tracy's really good at bringing the ball to ground. I think that's where Fremantle can get this game won. And I think their smalls can get to work and win this game. Now, the final game is a very interesting contest on Sunday. It's the Gold Coast up against Essendon. Now, on the AFL tipping app, it's very interesting because they've given the Gold Coast the favourites here. And the reason why I'm going the Gold Coast is, yes, one, it is at home. They haven't lost there this season. So they do have a very good record. But this is a test for Essendon, I think. I think that we're at the mid-season point now. Essendon kind of fell off at this point last year. They're in 5th spot, I think, by around 15 last year, and they fell straight off the face of the earth. They're in 2nd spot right now. They have to continue their form. I think this is probably 50-50, if I'm being honest. The main reason, though, I'm going the Gold Coast is because it's in the Gold Coast. If this was at Marvel Stadium, I'd be going Essendon all day. I may even stream this game, because I think this is going to be a really good contest. I am going to definitely stream the Friday game, guys. Collingwood v. the Bulldogs. But I'll definitely consider doing the Gold Coast Essendon game on Sunday as well. So before we move into the AFL Fantasy Chat, guys, let's quickly take a look at the league for the channel. So the tipping league for the channel, of course. This obviously started at the start of the year, so it's quite small. But at the moment, still Brandon leads on top with 70 tips. He is 1 tip in front of Paul, who actually got the highest this week with 8 tips. So congratulations to him. He only missed the one. I'll quickly take a look to see which one he missed. Everyone got the draw. So pissed off about that because I tipped Collingwood and a lot of people tipped Freo. So I was really disappointed that I didn't get that tip. But anyway, guess I lost that one. He tipped, Paul did tip Hawthorn. So good job on him for picking that one. Because I don't think anyone would have. He missed the Geelong game. So that's unfortunate. Not going to get the full 9. He was pretty close to getting it. But unfortunately missed that one. I moved into, I'm in 4th. I actually went down this week. But that's just because my total margin was beaten by Brett. Brett was able to just jump me on that. We both actually have the exact same margin. But I guess because he missed the margin on the Swans game on Thursday night by 1. So he was pretty close to getting it. I don't actually think you get a bonus for anything for that. But I guess it's like a little percentage anyway. My brother is sitting in 8th spot. I think he's actually climbed the last few weeks. So he's done a pretty good job. And the lowest this week went to Johnny, the Fevolutionized. I think that's what it is. He got 5. Dude, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be mean, Johnny, but how did you get 5 this week? This was such an easy one to do. I have to look to see what you tipped, man, because that's pretty terrible from you. He tipped the Dogs against Sydney. Look, I could understand that, thinking that Sydney were kind of due for a loss. I get that one. Why did you tip North Melbourne over Port Adelaide? North aren't winning a game this year. You can't, look, even if they do win a game this year, you can't tip them. You can't predict them winning a game. You tipped Geelong, that's fair enough. You tipped Brisbane, again, fair enough. And, okay, you didn't, I thought you tipped West Coast as well. Someone else tipped West Coast. How the hell do you do that, dude? They're not going to win against the Crows in Adelaide. Anyway, so Johnny missed a couple this week. I'm sorry, man, but there's a couple there. I'll give you the Bulldogs, but you can't pick North. I'm sorry. That's not good enough. I'm very disappointed in you. You need to leave me a note on Monday and with an apology, because that was terrible. Anyway, I'm sorry, but fuck, that's bad. Anyway, and still on bottom is Daniel. So Daniel has been on bottom for quite a while now, but at the moment he's equal bottom. So he's not that bad. There's also Kirk, who is Brighton 75. He's also on bottom with 62. Lana also coming back to 63, and Johnny, actually, because of all this, my brother was able to jump a few tips. So I do appreciate you guys helping him out. I know he does feel a bit sad. He comes to me every single week after the podcast and says, look, can you just tell them to start losing some tips so I can just start getting in front? Maybe that's why Johnny actually tipped North Melbourne to try and get my brother up a few tips. So I do appreciate that, Johnny, actually. I take it all back. Thank you for that, because he is my younger brother, so sometimes I do need to protect him, and I do appreciate you dropping a couple of tips for him. Anyway, that's kind of all the AFL tips for this week. Let's move on. We'll talk about the AFL Fantasy Chat, and oh my god, am I in form at the moment. I am making such a charge for the AFL Fantasy top spot. But, well, I'm not going to make top spot, but I'm actually in really good form at the moment. So, last week, I got 2,146, which is, it was 19,000 ranks. So that's not it's not very good, is it? But it's not too bad. Big performers was, I did take Nick Dacos' and vice captain points. I was happy with that. Took Miller, was a little bit disappointing, got 71. But Luke Davis-Uniacke, I've been having to hold him the last few weeks. He's got 100 the last 3 weeks. He didn't get 100 for the first fucking, I think, 8 rounds. I had to hold him because I had to fix up a lot more of my team, which has kind of worked out for me. But yeah, he's been okay. Who else was there? Yeah, my forward line got absolutely decimated this week. There was a couple of good performances from Sexton, who I brought in. He got 81, and Darcy Wilson was able to grind away to 80. But obviously, the laid out for Sam Flanders is really disappointing. But my highest score in my forward line this week was not even in my team. I only took the points because I absolutely needed it. It was Joe Richards, who got 94. But I think a lot of people have struggled with their forward line this week. Yeah, that was pretty disappointing. And I did have my Isaac Heaney in the midfield, so that's kind of why he was my lowest. I can't believe Joe Richards is my highest score. Good performance from Max Gawn, 152. Obviously take that. Brody Grundy with the 119. He's been really good performance the last couple of weeks. Bontempelli, 98. I just have to hold him at the moment. I think I'm going to hold him through the buys and see if I can get rid of him. Tom Green, he's an interesting one. I'll talk about that in a minute. He only got 91. Riley Bonner got 65 and Elliot Yeo got 72. Look, that's not the best, but I'm going to take that at this point because Riley Bonner's had a massive year. I'm going to give him a bit of a mulligan there. He's had a massive year fantasy-wise, and Elliot Yeo coming back from injury, and they got thrashed by nearly 100 points. So I'll give them both a pass on that one. But moving into my trades for this week, obviously this is the first week of 3 trades. You will get them throughout, I think it's all 4 weeks of the buys. So I'll be trying to use them wisely. With the buys this week going to Brisbane, North Melbourne, Sydney, and GWS. The 3 players, well, 2 of the players that I've tried to trade out were 2 of the players were players who were on buys, and 1 was a player that's kind of bottomed out. So my first trade was getting rid of Tom Powell for Matt Crouch. Obviously, I was able to put Isaac Heaney back into the forward line, and then move Matt Crouch into the midfield. I got rid of Jai Clark. I was going to say Jordan Clark. Jai Clark, I got rid of him. 343. He's got suspended for a week this week, so thought it's time to get rid of him. And I got at this stage it's just going to be Sean Manor, but it's basically whoever's going to be like playing this week that's around that 240 mark or whatever. So I've got rid of a rookie midfielder. And then my other trade is I've got rid of Tom Green and I'm going to pick up Jordan Dawson. Now, the reason why I've got rid of Tom Green is since that injury against Sydney, he has not been able to hit 100. And he's really not in good form at the moment, Tom Green, on the AFL fantasy front. He's okay at the moment, but right now, I had a choice between him or Davis-Uniacke, and both of them are on buys. I kept Davis-Uniacke because I think he's playing for a contract slash slash a trade here, trying to get his value up, in my opinion. I think in the last 3 weeks, he's shown that he's like trying to prove his... And I think also as well, people have questioned his form, so I think he's definitely jumped since then. So that's why I've kind of gone with Tom Green here to get rid of him. But that may change this week because obviously he's got the week off. Maybe he'll be back with a vengeance after the buys. I did also look at the fixture, and I do believe that the North Melbourne have the better fixture coming up after the next 4 weeks. So we'll just have to wait and see on that front. But I've got Jordan Dawson, and I don't think I would have gone for anyone else, really. He's in great form at the moment. I'll be interested to see if he does get tagged the next few weeks because he just ran rampant around the West Coast Eagles all afternoon on Sunday. So I will see if he gets tagged or whatever. But salary still have 16k, but I think that's where I'm going to sit at this point. Obviously, the buys this week, my team's not going to look the greatest. But right now, I'm kind of setting up for I'm trying to set up my forward line, really, from now. My midfield's almost set for the year, I would say. My midfield currently sits Dawson, Walsh, Martin, Crouch, Bontempelli, Miller. Oliver at this stage is sitting there, and then, who's the other one? Davis Uniacke as well. So, all of them, like if I had Oliver at the start of if you had Oliver at the start of the year, and you had, like, if you didn't account for his start of the year, I'm saying, is you would think that's a pretty decent midfield to run through for the rest of the year. So I'm sitting with that right now. My defense, like that was my best team. Obviously, David Uniacke isn't in the team this week, but that's what I'm saying. My defense would be sitting Sheasel, Dacos, Young, Bonner, Yo, Clousey. At the moment, Clousey's pretty much the only one I have to look to get rid of, but even he's doing decent at the moment. He's not something that I have to push out. I'm probably going to wait till the buy to get rid of him. And my forward line, that's where I'm really sitting right now. I've got my forward line is Heaney, Flanders, Sexton, Wilson, Dempsey, and Harley Reid. So I've got to get rid of at least Dempsey and Harley Reid by their buys at the moment. Wilson can kind of sit there for now. I think he can be my 22nd player, my 6th forward for the moment. There's not like any push to get rid of him. But that's kind of where I'm sitting at right now. And Alex Sexton, he's had a good couple of weeks. He grinded to get 81. He didn't look like he's going to get it, so he did well to get to 81 in the end in a pretty poor performance from the Gold Coast. So that's a bit of a watch at this stage. I kind of got him because they've got the last buy, I believe, the Gold Coast. So that's kind of the reason why I got him. But yeah, he may go by the buy. But at this stage, that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. Brodie Grundy, I had maybe a little thought of maybe getting rid of him and going up for the top one, going for a top ruckman. But at the moment, Gawn, Grundy. I said it at the start of the year. Those two are the set and forget ruckman, and they have been for the whole year. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now, let's look at the league. So, I think I've won 5 out of my last 6 games. I'm in hot form, guys, and you better watch out for me because I told you at the start of the year that I'm good at this, and I started very dreadfully. I picked a terrible team, and the ones that I picked like for a point of difference were terrible, but now I've got a team that's set up, and it's doing okay. So last week, I was playing against Haydos, and I was able to win by 200 points, so that's a pretty decent win for me. I have moved into the 8 for the first time this year. Go me. I'm in 8, so I'm not exactly high up at the moment, but got a percentage of 102. That's not too bad. So currently sitting in front of me is Serial Squirrels Grippers in 7th spot. I think my brother was the one who beat him last week, so my brother finally got a win. He's not doing too good. He's down in 13th spot, but he did get he's only 1 win behind me, so he's not that bad. He's just with percentages terrible. Anyway, currently on top is still Brad SCG or Brad Reed. He's a Sydney Swans supporter. I give him a pump up every week. But he did lose last week. So I did see that. He lost against Inverted Banana, which is a very nice name. I like that. Inverted Banana technically is in 3rd spot, so he didn't lose to someone terrible. Shillings for Billings is still in 2nd, and like I said, Inverted Banana is in 3rd and climbing. Looking at the overall ladder, though, Brad is the top team. Inverted Banana is the 2nd team, and Shillings for Billings. So the top 3 players in our league are also they're different positions, but they're all top 3 as well. So they're definitely good at this. I think I'm in 9th for total score, so I'm basically where I should be at this stage. There's a couple of people right now in the league that have definitely underachieved on the head-to-head like battles, because Fife8 is sitting in 9th spot in the head-to-head ladder, and he's 4th best scorer in the league, in the AFL Fantasy this year. And I don't know what's happened to you, Seymour Bush, sorry bro, but you've had a very good year scoring-wise, but you can't win a game to save your life. You're in 14th spot right now. You're below my brother. How is that the case? You've scored very well this year. How are you down there? That's actually hard to do. I don't know how you've done that. You must have had a really tough start to the year. I'm thinking by the end of the year, you should be like climbing towards finals, but I can't believe that. You've lost 2 of your past 3 as well. And this should be when you're starting to win your games too. He lost last week too. He lost this week too. Oh, God. He did lose to the team who scored the highest. He's just got unlucky, I think. I'm sorry to you, Seymour Bush, but you just got unlucky, I think, this season. It's really unlucky for him. But yeah, guys, it's basically, looking down the bottom, it's still Mumbus down the bottom, but I don't think he's trying anymore. basically who's, I think, still trying, but is in the league. So 17th spot is Cardman. I think that's the YouTuber too. So he's not doing too good. He's 17th spot in our league. But anyway, tough times for him. But I'm sitting in 8th spot, so I'm happy. But guys, that's basically all we have for the footy stuff this week. There's not really a lot of world soccer to really take a look at. Obviously, the season finished in the Premier League. I guess the one thing that did happen in the soccer part was Southampton were promoted into the Premier League for next season, so that was good. They beat Leeds 1-0. That's kind of really all the soccer stuff that I've seen going through. So I guess that's really where we're going to end it, guys. Thank you for listening for this episode of the Boundary Riders podcast. If you did enjoy it, make sure to like and subscribe over on YouTube and on, Spotify, idiot. Over on Spotify, if you did enjoy it, make sure to leave us 5 stars and also make sure to follow as well so you're notified on the podcast. And of course, the review. The review's been going pretty well at the moment. We're about halfway through the season, of course, so I'm thinking I'm not going to show you guys the leaderboard of the Boundary Riders votes. I think I'm going to leave it till we're just going to do the countdown on the live stream. I think that's going to be a lot better. I was thinking maybe I'd show you at halfway, but I think it's just going to make a lot more of a fun live stream if we just do it right at the end. I will tell you right now that even though it's only round 11, so we're just before the buys, it's a very close race right now. It's not just like everyone's saying, oh, it's Isaac Heaney in front. Isaac Heaney, I won't even say where he is, but it's definitely a close race. And look, if a Swans player does win it, I'm sorry, but they have had a good season, all right? If you don't remember Port Adelaide last year, Zach Butters won it, but my brother didn't help. He did help quite a lot with the votes last year, but I don't think he definitely didn't. He definitely didn't attribute to winning it for him. I'll say that much. But yeah, I mean, I don't really care who wins it. I think it's just more fun for the content of it anyway. But yeah, anyway, guys, I'll end it there. Thanks for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you all next week.